Ah, you're here. Good. I am Carrie, the Vault Dweller mad scientist pin-up girl. And today we've got a story time. Because I'd like to tell you about what brought me into all that retro electronics thing. Because that's a certain franchise in gaming that has been only popular since around 2008, but it has been around since 1997. And of course it is Fallout, and I've known and have been a maniac of Fallout since 1998 or 9. Something about it. There was a Polish gaming magazine named CD Action that published CD-ROMs with some of the games, and at some point they released Fallout. And oh damn, was I hooked! Oh, was I hooked! Because when I first played it, I was just... I couldn't... for some reason I couldn't fire it up on my computer. I had to visit one or another of my colleagues, of my friends. And I did spend long evenings at their place, and I also did some mistakes when doing the playthrough without a walkthrough. Like I turned a few cities against me, like, and I murdered the whole of Junktown and the whole of the hub, and then when I was doing the second part, I also turned Vault City hostile. I screwed up a big time. Yeah, and yes, I've been a maniac nerd of Fallout since then, for all the high school and my studies. Then I pretty much stopped, but every now and then I also played Fallout 2 with one of the big mods, like the Fallout 2 Restoration Project, or Fallout 1.5 Resurrection, or Fallout Nevada. I'm very partial to those old school computer role-playing games, and while back in the day I didn't have a thing for fantasy cRPGs, because they were all so popular, and Fallout was pretty much alternative, and it was dark. It had a grit. It was dark. It had a lot of shit going on, and that's the reason why it was censored in many places. Like the Western European version of Fallout 2 didn't have children at all, because the regulations in the UK or Germany disallowed killing children in the game, and there were some regulations against violence in gaming. It was not like the games were just ESRB rated, but they were actually prohibited from having any blood or graphic violence in certain countries. The Polish distribution was fortunately the American one without all that censorship rubbish. And if you play it with a bloody mess perk in the not perk but trait in the first part, and the bloody mess violence setting in the second one, then you will see some pretty much drastic death sequences and that kind of stuff. It was pretty brutal, but then for a gamer mature enough, it has advantages. Anyway, back in high school, I was such an obsessed nerd that I asked literally every one of my colleagues if they played Fallout. It was really one of my special interests. Now I'm laughing, but back then I think it was kinda creepy. Especially given that I was not seen as a girl, and I didn't even see myself as a girl. Anyway, I've got a collection of Fallout games, either from CD Action or bought from some Polish shops. Fallout 1, it doesn't have the front cover, but the CD is here, and the back cover is here, and they are both from CD Action. Same for Fallout 2. I remembered about the front cover. It is here. If you take a look here, you can see that I just glued the flimsy paper to another layer of paper from CD Action magazine to make it a little stronger. The CD was also the CD Action distribution, and the backside it is as well. I also have Fallout New Vegas that I bought something like the Ultimate Edition. I bought it a few years after it came out. It was pretty cheap, but still I just had to play it at some point in my life, because even though I heard some not so favorable opinions of Fallout 3, in fact I never played it, I admit. But New Vegas, made by Obsidian Entertainment, story-wise it was way better and much more like the old school 1 and 2, because it was some of the people who worked on 1 and 2 that worked on New Vegas. I did play some Fallout 4, didn't beat the game, but graphics-wise it is pretty, but story-wise, meh. It's so Bethesda. and I played Fallout Tactics a few times. It is considered non-canon, but given the storyline in Fallout 3 and 4, I think that at least some parts of Fallout Tactics, like the Brotherhood of Steel expedition towards the east, that would match the new canon pretty well. And I'd rather be in favor revising the storyline and tactics and analyzing it and seeing whether some parts of it could be considered canon. Like I think that the airship crash and the airship expedition is definitely canon. The airship crash could be, and that is why the Brotherhood of Steel could have established an operation near Chicago, but the whole thing with Vault Zero, I think is bullshit, and even aesthetics-wise, Vault Zero and the army of robots, and that doesn't even match anything in the franchise throughout all of its history. Not even in Fallout 4 I can see any references to the interior design of Vault Zero and robot locations, let's say it. Anyway, Fallout is it's also how my huge interest in vacuum tubes and antique electronics and Cold War electronics design started. I was very fond of the aesthetics of electronic devices, of computers or other kind of stuff you could see in the Fallout 1 and 2 manuals and in-game in the loading screens. I got so much inspired by it that first of all I named my first electronics lab Vault-Tec Electronics, and yeah, I didn't care about any copyright. No, in the Bethesda times I don't think I would. But second, I really loved the way those devices were designed and made, the space era and 50s style of building stuff, and most of that was of course vacuum tubes technology, and that's where my interest in that started. Let me show you something. Yeah, that's the control panel I once built for a rack mount hi-fi system. Like you see, it has a green panel and a 19-inch rack mount enclosure. All of it was handmade, and the panel is powder coated. On the inside we can see some electrical parts, and I'll be taking the thing apart because I need a few of the fuses for another project, and yeah, I think I would reuse some parts in something different. Anyway, Fallout had a huge influence on how Vault-Tec Electronics and then Navis Electronics and then Keritech Electronics looked like. How I built the vacuum tube amps, because my interest in Fallout was very early 2000s, and I actually started building tube amps in 2004, something like that, maybe 2003, so that would be almost 20 years now. And when I was building an amp, I always tried my best at making a reliable circuit using old school technologies without any printed circuit board. I did build all of my amps as point-to-point devices and technology, and modded them like, let me bring in the one that I built recently, show you. The SN34 that I will be featuring in one of the upcoming videos. I'll be going through the details of this little push-pull stereo amp, but the way I made it, the only thing that resembles a printed circuit board, it's actually a perf board, but all the rest is wired as point-to-point, using some nice vintage components, and yeah, I'll be giving this amp to the customer that ordered it pretty soon. So I've still got some time to finish the enclosure and make a video of it. Anyway, about the clash between old school and modern Fallout games, there was a war, and war never changes. There was almost a war between the old school fans that wanted Fallout to follow the direction it took in late 1990s, the Interplay school, and there were certain problems at Interplay that they had to cancel the Fallout 3 project they had in the works. That project was named Van Buren, and they had to cancel it and sell the franchise. Bethesda bought it, and they wanted to make a completely different style of games, like the first-person perspective, because they had experience doing it from the Elder Scrolls series. Back then they have developed the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, then the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, and then of course 5 Skyrim. And they were good at making first-person perspective games, role-playing games, so they wanted to try it with Fallout, because they also saw that there would be a market for it, and there was. The advantage of Bethesda doing the Fallout franchise was that they drew thousands or millions of new fans to the franchise at the cost of deterring a lot of old fans who wanted to keep the Interplay and Black Isle legacy of Fallout. And I was among the latter, to be honest. now that sentiment pretty much fade away, and I'm not as hard on Bethesda's decisions anymore, but I was pretty much fanatical about the old school Fallout games, and I still love them. I don't really have too much time to play, but I still do love them. And at some point I might play Fallout 2 with one of the mods. Okay, that would be the thing I wanted to share about my personal story with Fallout, and how it influenced my life decisions, and how it got me into vacuum tube electronics. That was Kerry, the Vault Dweller mad scientist pinup girl, signing off, saying bye.